Shall we start?
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you all for joining this International Youth Convention on Kashmir. My name is Yusuf Farooq. I'm a youth activist and I will be moderating today's conference. Please could I ask anyone who's not speaking to put themselves on mute to cancel out any background noise. And could I also request that all speakers turn on their video, please? Thank you. I would now like to ask Mr. Fahim Kayani Sab to open the conference with his opening remarks. Fahim Kayani is the president of Tehreek-e-Kashmir, UK. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Brother Yusuf. First of all, I would like to welcome His Excellency Sardar Masood Khan, President of AJK, and everyone, and thank for your participation in this International Kashmir Youth Convention through video link. Young people play an important role in the rise and fall of nations, and history tells us that freedom movements will not succeed unless the youth are made a part of it. The vision of our Kashmir movement at international level lies in the hands of our youth because they are filled with the tremendous and towering ambitions. It will be a great wastage of human resources if British and European, Pakistani and Kashmiri youth are not given an opportunity to exercise their talent in Kashmir freedom movement. The purpose of this International Kashmir Youth Convention is to highlight the suffering of innocent Kashmiris who have been living under Indian brutal occupation, subjugation, and oppression for more than 70 years. Kashmir has been under Indian siege for more than 13 months. Kashmiris have been systematically, economically destroyed, and they are in need of urgent food and medicine. But the Indian regime is not providing any help and is even refusing international relief agencies access into Kashmir. Kashmiris, Pakistani, and all peace-loving people want to send aid to Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir through international charities. However, this is being denied. The United Nations should put pressure on India to allow access for international relief agencies into Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The world is fighting against COVID-19, but India is killing innocent Kashmiris. I believe that we in the United Kingdom and Europe have an obligation or opportunity to stand for justice, provide support to victims, and ensure the voice of the oppressed people of Kashmir is heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fahim Kayani Sab. I would now like to call on His Excellency, the President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Sardar Masood Khan Sab, to give his remarks. Thank you.
You need to unmute.
I think we've just lost the video of Sardar.
Could you? They just lost the connection. Let me check.
I think we have the connection back now.
Can we hear? Can we hear each other?
Yes, we can hear you.
Now, is it my turn to speak now? Not yet.
But Yusuf?
Yeah, sorry, we just lost connection. but I would like to call His Excellent Sardar Masood Khan Sahib, the President of Azad Jammu Kashmir, to give his remarks. Sorry about the connection loss, but please go ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I thank Mr. Fahim Kiani, President of the Tehreek-e-Kashmir, United Kingdom, for organizing this youth convention. And I'm also thankful to the participants who are present here today. They include participants not only from the United Kingdom, Scotland, but also from Norway, Italy, Denmark, and Portugal. So it is a Europe-wide conference, and I feel privileged to speak to these young men and women from all over Europe and the United Kingdom. Well, let me go to the heart of the matter. The situation in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is dire, and it is deteriorating by the day. Let me tell you what's happening there. What I want to put on top of the agenda, that is the migration or forced migration or planned migration of Hindus from all over India to the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, as you would recall that for the past 73 years, or to be more precise, for the past 72 years, till August the 5th last year, India has been trying to brutalize the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It had used all methods in its armory and repertoire, including brute force, also economic blandishments, demonization of the Kashmiris as terrorists, and enlisting the support of pro-India political entities and leaders. But nothing worked. I mean, in 1947, the people in the streets of Kashmir were chanting the slogan of Azadi, and at the time of the martyrdom of Burhan Wani, or at the time of August the 4th, the valleys and mountains and rivers of the Indian occupied territory were resonating with the slogans of Azadi. So the Indians, despite their oppression, could not crush this movement, this aspiration in the hearts of the people. And therefore, they came up with a novel idea. While the world was to become a victim of novel coronavirus, we saw a novel form of colonialism, settler colonialism in the Indian occupied territory unleashed by India. Its novelty is that you bring Hindus from all over India and change the population so that you do not have to try to win hearts and minds of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And that's what they started last year. But in fact, they put it into operation this April by first issuing a fake law, which is called domestic certificates. These are domicile certificates, and then starting inducting and importing Hindus from all over India. And in the past 3 months, they have already inducted 1.8 million Hindus from all over India, and they have issued domicile certificates to them. Now, I said that this is novel settler colonialism, but it is not so novel. If you go back to the last century, you're all familiar with the Balfour Declaration. This declaration was designed to make Palestine home of the Jews. And Lord Balfour, as a matter of fact, designed it. And according to this declaration, a plan, a very vicious plan, was unveiled, whereby between 1918 and 1948, millions of Jews were imported from the Russian Federation. It used to be called the Soviet Union at that time, or from Europe, and they were settled there. And even before Israel could occupy chunks of Palestinian territory and call it Israel, they had already flooded the territory with Jews from all over the world. And that process continued even during the Second World War. And the second playbook that the Indian imperialists are using in the Indian occupied territory are, in fact, the Nuremberg Laws. These laws were introduced in the last century, in 1935, by the Nazi Party, and the purpose was to disenfranchise and dispossess Jews and push them into concentration camps, and later on they were burned in these gas chambers, or they were displaced and they were forced to migrate, and the businesses were robbed and so on. You see the same sort of pattern developing in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, this is the similarity that I have pointed out, but the dissimilarity is that what the Balfour Declaration took decades to accomplish, or what the Israelis took decades to build and construct these illicit settlements, India is planning to do it in 2 years, as a matter of fact, the coming 2 years, and the process has started. Now, the second most serious violation of human rights that has taken place in the occupied territory is the spree of killings, this killing spree. You can give it many names under the international law. You can call it genocide, ethnic cleansing, war crimes. You can also call it massacres, but there are many words for it, but genocide is what is taking place in Kashmir right now. There are also concentration camps in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, where teenagers and young boys are incarcerated and they're being tortured there. So economic exploitation of the territory is also going on in two forms. The economy of the Kashmiris and their livelihoods are being crippled. And second, there is this unending exploitation of the resources of the Kashmiri people, be it minerals, be it precious stones, or other valuable things that you find in Kashmir. They are being robbed, they are being taken away from the Kashmiris. In fact, all the businesses of Kashmiris have been delegitimized, and they have been subcontracted to the outsiders who do not live in Kashmir, because now Kashmir is fair game, and anybody can come to Kashmir and plunder it. They see it as a window of opportunity, not only the new settlers, but also these carpetbaggers who are coming there. While this is going on, India is also pursuing the scheme of gerrymandering, which means that they are redistricting electoral units, electoral constituencies, so that if there's an election of a fake assembly, they would ensure that the Muslim representation is decreased. So this evil plan is to reduce Muslim majority into a minority. And of course, in addition to that, I mean, Muslims have been, as I said earlier, they are being disenfranchised, and they would not have their possessions, they would not have their properties, and they will have to compete for their livelihoods or jobs that were reserved for the Kashmiri people. So what you're witnessing is economic strangulation of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. The last point in this context I want to put across to you is this doctrine of Hindutva. Some people say that it is reincarnation of fascism or Nazism. It is more lethal and more toxic than the fascism of the last century. This doctrine is based on religious superiority, and they think that the only pure religion in this Indian subcontinent is Hinduism, and others, Muslim, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, not Buddhists, but Sikhs, definitely, that they make the land impure, and therefore the land has been cleansed, there has to be cleansed by killing, persecuting, or expelling followers of Islam or Christianity or Sikhism. but their main target is Muslims, and it is being sustained through a very, very vile Islamophobic campaign. Now, let me go to the profile of Kashmiri youth. You know, this is, some say that this is the fifth generation of Kashmiri youth that has held the baton of freedom and liberty in the occupied territory. And over the years, since 1947, the youth has changed. I mean, now the youth that we see, the millennials and a little older than millennials, these are all, most of them are educated people. They have access to technology. They also have studied social sciences, and therefore they are aware of their rights, their civil liberties and fundamental freedoms. They are also aware of the developments taking place in the rest of the world. Now, this is a big mass inside the Kashmir territory. I mean, there are many known writers, there are journalists, filmmakers who are making their mark, not in the occupied territory, but all over the world. And the other phenomenon is that these Kashmiris have traveled all over the world. I've met Kashmiri students, boys and girls, studying in, for instance, United Kingdom, United States, the Gulf region, European universities, also in East Asia, including Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia, Japan. So this is a new generation which is waging this war against India's tyranny, or to be more precise, the tyranny unleashed by the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, and Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So while India is suppressing these Kashmiris, they should not take this huge youth bulge of the Kashmiris for granted. You have a similar situation in Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan, according to a survey that was conducted by the UNDP some time ago. 64% of the population in this part of the world is below the age of 30, which is about 130 to 140 million people. Now, this is also a big chunk. And I have gone abroad and I've seen that, of course, there were those economic migrants who went to the United Kingdom from Mirpur or Pakistan or from the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir in the 1960s, 1970s. And at that time, most of them were unskilled, uneducated, and but they had this passion to do something with their lives and with their kids. And now we see third or fourth generation of the Kashmiris and Pakistanis active in United Kingdom, Europe, and North America, and all over the world. And they are a different breed because they're politically savvy and they're economically stable. They're politically conscious, and they have a keen interest in politics at the local level, politics at the national level. And by the grace of Allah Almighty and with the help of the electorate, many of them have ended up in lawmaking bodies, be they be councils or the parliaments. So you have a different profile of the youth. So what I want to emphasize is that youth is not helpless. The people of Jammu and Kashmir who are besieged, they are helpless. But despite their helplessness, they have pinned down 900,000 troops of India who are armed to the teeth. And yet these unarmed people, they have defeated them in a way, because every time they have to beef up the presence of the Indian forces. So they are shackled, but this youth, the profile of the people of Jammu and Kashmir who are abroad, and the people of Pakistan, the youth of Pakistan and Azad Kashmir or the diaspora community, they are not chained in any way. And the sky is the limit for what they can do. So this is what I want to highlight. Now, what is it that we can do? My appeal to you is twofold. One is that please think about it and turn this movement, the Kashmir movement, into an international civil society movement, a rights movement, an international movement like a civil rights movement in the United States, or the movement against the Vietnam War, or the movement against apartheid, something on that critical scale. This is my first appeal, and this is doable because if we go to the United Nations Security Council, or to the General Assembly, or to the Human Rights Council, with the present level of political dynamics, handicapped by realpolitik and motivated or driven by profits or strategic interests, they do not open the doors, or they do not focus sharply on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. So the onus is on us to turn it into an international movement, a popular international movement, a movement which is visible in squares and streets, not just in closed chambers or drawing boards. Second is that India is getting away with murder. There are no sanctions being imposed against India. I mean, if there was any other country, I know I sat in the Security Council for 2 years, and I know that if it was any other country, I mean, a smaller country like Central African Republic, or South Sudan, or let's say some countries in West Africa or East Africa, then the entire machinery of the United Nations Security Council would be mobilized under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter for peacemaking, peacekeeping, and peace building. Nothing of the sort is happening in Kashmir. But we can turn it into an international civil society movement, an international movement. You're already doing that. I know. I know that whenever there's a call, for instance, for Kashmir Solidarity Day or a Black Day, or when India is celebrating its independence, so we mark a Black Day, the international community, and particularly the diaspora community in the United Kingdom, Europe, and North America, all over the world, in fact, they come to the streets, demonstrate, and protest against India's colonialism and oppression. So you have already turned into an international movement. But this process is periodic and spasmodic. This is not systematic. We have to make it systematic. The second appeal that I want to make is that we must think of the punitive measures that can be imposed on India. Because for Palestine, there is a boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, and it has made an impact, although the Palestinian issue has also not been resolved up to this day. But I think that there should be a Kashmir-specific BDS, and only youth abroad, and by partnering with youth here in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir, can push forward a movement like that. And we will, I can assure you that if we demonstrate conviction and resilience, there are lots of, hundreds of millions of freedom-loving citizens of the world who would join us. Again, I would like to say that I think that the youth all over the world should be politically active, whether it is party congresses or whether it is council elections or national elections. In last year, what happened, it was for me, who's been working on Kashmir for decades, it was kind of a miracle. Post-August the 5th, 2019, a big door was opened to the Kashmiris in the realm of communications, in the realm of the media in all its forms, whether it was social media or whether it was print media or whether it was visual media, television networks, new media or traditional media. So, because many Kashmiri voices were found space in the leading journals and newspapers and television networks. That door is still ajar. It has not been closed. And let's continue to make use of that door locally. For instance, I'm in Norway or Italy or Portugal or Denmark, wherever we have that space, or in the United States. And the third thing that I want to say is that multilateral forums are very important. Like all of you can write letters to the United Nations Secretary General. You keep track of the developments in the Security Council. You can write directly to the President of the Security Council. The procedures of the United Nations Security Council and the United Nations Secretariat create that kind of space. It is your legitimate right to put across your point of view, not just to the newspapers or also to the media, but also directly to the forums where decisions are made, and the United Nations Security Council is one of them. We can have a consultation at the expert level, and we can give advice as to how it can be done, how you can write directly to the special rapporteurs who are, for instance, working on a convention on torture or discrimination against women or racial discrimination or religious discrimination, or for instance, those actions which kick in if somebody is violating Universal Declaration of Human Rights or the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. All of these conventions, or the Fourth Geneva Convention, which prohibits this kind of transfer of population in an occupied territory, or the Genocide Convention itself. Now, all of them, Genocide Convention is the 1948 Geneva Genocide Convention has a body. It has a treaty body, and we can reach out to them. Again, I would say that it would be useful, it is already being done, but I think that we should increase the volume, take our movement to a critical pitch, a critical level. And for that, we should muster the support of a critical mass, build it, so that Kashmir's voice is not lost, it resonates throughout the world, in the multilateral and formal fora, and also outside in the squares and the streets. In this context, I think that human rights organizations and think tanks, universities, they are very, very important. I think I'll stop here, and I would listen to you. And if there are any points which I think need explanation or a response, I would gladly engage with you towards the end of this webinar. Thank you so much, Mr. Fahim-Kiani, for organizing this very timely and useful get-together.
Thank you very much to His Excellency Sardar Masood Khan Saab for that very insightful address. And I hope we can reflect upon this and take action upon some of his very insightful suggestions. I now call on Ms. Hina Ahmed, who is the president of Tehreek-e-Kashmir Youth Denmark, to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Hina Ahmed. I am the president of the Tehreek-e-Kashmir Youth in Denmark. A few weeks ago, on the anniversary of the revoking of the special status granted under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, I attended a demonstration in front of the Indian Embassy here in Copenhagen. And I held a speech, and that is something I've never done before. But after doing that, when I saw the reaction that the community has, that people have, whether that's the youth or that's our elders, the seniors, or even people my own age, the response that there is to the youth taking a step forward, the response that there is to young people saying that they have had enough and they want change, and if that change is not coming from elsewhere, then they will make that change themselves. That response is huge, and it's amazing to see what people can do. And just this conference itself, people coming together from all over the continent for one cause, it's huge. And I truly believe that it, as His Excellency the President is saying, it could get to a platform such as civil rights movement, and it could make a huge difference in this case. And I truly believe that the issue of Kashmir has been silenced. As we're saying, there's murder going on. This is an illegal occupation, and not enough has been done by the international community. And I also urge everyone to not just go to your own communities, not just your local politicians, but also to the United Nations. You do have the rights to write to them, to email them, and to speak to them. And that is very, very important. As a young woman myself, seeing the circumstances that people are living in Kashmir is horrendous, and it's not even on a political level. It's also as a human and as someone, as a sister and as a daughter. It's heartbreaking seeing that these people have been everything has been taken from them. There's so many things we do every single day that we see as just an everyday thing, but they're privileges, because people in Kashmir fear going to school, they fear going on the streets, and they don't have these basic rights that we live with every single day. And as myself, as a university student, every single day I think about what I would do without an education, what I would do if I couldn't go to school. And this past year, when I've had to attend lectures at home through Zoom, I realized how much of a privilege that is, because I'm still attending school even though we're going through a global pandemic. So I feel like it's very important that we also highlight that it's much more than just politics, because the United Nations and many other countries like to talk about women's rights and children's rights and how important education is, etc., etc. These are human rights that everyone should have, and also the people of Kashmir. And I truly believe that if we all kind of collect the people that would require to push through them, then it is possible. And I believe in that. And I feel like that just with this conference itself, it's a huge step in that way, that we can come together and acknowledge that there is a problem, and we will take a step forward as a youth in together with the seniors. So thank you.
Thank you very much to Mrs. Hina Ahmed, and I'm sure we all agree and we can reflect upon this, and we all look forward to working together across Europe and across the world for the freedom of the Kashmiri people as young activists. I now call on Mr. Muhammad Abdul Hafiz Khan, a researcher at the One Institute, to deliver his address. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. So my name is Muhammad Abdul Hafiz Khan. I'm a researcher at the One Institute. So what I want to do is just highlight a few abuses within Indian occupied Kashmir. But the reality is, when you look at the abuses in Indian occupied Kashmir, where do you start from? From the onset of 1947, Kashmir has been subject to unthinkable abuses. To speak about every single abuse would take a lifetime. Just the mere abolishment of Article 370 and 35A alone demands an international response. As we all know, the so-called world's biggest democracy has failed to deliver the most basic of human rights in Kashmir. It has an atrocious record of human rights in Kashmir, where forced disappearances, killings, and rape are common practices. The 86,000 square mile region, once the paradise upon earth, is now home to almost 1 million Indian troops. Now that is absolutely shocking. Since 2012, there have been 230 internet shutdowns. Just in the last 8 months and 27 days, there have been 50 shutdowns. Now, during this pandemic, where we in the UK and many countries across the world celebrate and praise our health workers, in Kashmir, health workers who are trying to get guidance, for example, from the UK, it takes them 1 hour to download a 24 megabyte document. Now, that has atrocious effects upon patients. People have to walk 30 to 40 kilometers just to receive treatment. Even since the abolishment of Article 370 and 35A, the genocide alert have put Kashmir, the genocide watch have put Kashmir on a genocide alert. All fingers point in one direction, and these are simple facts which we can't deny. The fact that the repression of the people psychologically by persistent lockdowns has created a siege mentality. What they have created is a pigeonhole and a prison-like atmosphere for the people. Now, this leads to either the people being demoralized or to rebel in many forms, which then the army punishes heavily, including rape, torture, and killings, which is done publicly without any accountability. For instance, in 2010, there was a case where an army major approached 3 youngsters with the promise of a job. What happened later, the locals reported them missing, and their bodies were found near the line of control. And the Indian army reported that they were killed they were militants. We found guns with them. We found Pakistani currency. These are the cases that occur, and there's many, many more cases. Even with all the legalistic stuff, they still behave like an occupying force. They are a threat to Kashmiriyat. They are a threat to people's lives. And the continuous use of systematic torture to scare and subject the people into not rebelling, into not gaining their rights, has violated all the conventions, the Geneva Convention, human rights declarations. It's even against the Paris Principles. Now, the Indian Human Rights Commission, which was set up directly in result of the Paris Principle, has incompletely failed to address these issues in accordance to the principles. Now, if such institutions are silent, then this becomes normalized and legitimized. So what we need to do is make a global unified message. We need to work together to make people aware of what's happening. We need to go to the right authorities and report what's happening. And I'd like to conclude with what Malcolm X said. You can't separate peace and freedom, because no one can be at peace if he has no freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Muhammad Khan and for your insights on the current human rights abuses. Very useful. Our next speaker is Mrs. Sumaya Ubaid, who is a youth leader of Tehreek-e-Kashmir, Scotland. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Sumaya. I'm a primary school teacher in Glasgow, and my grandparents are both from Kashmir. Of course, my granddad plays a big part in Glasgow. He always takes us to rallies and makes sure that we are all fully aware of the situation in Kashmir and doing our best for Kashmir. And listening today, I have to admit, I'm not as aware as most people, but I've learned so much and I'm thankful for that. But just in terms of my grandparents and my family, of course, it's not the Kashmir that they knew anymore. It's changed. There's been a lot of violence that has increased, and the well-being of the Kashmiri people has progressively worsened, as we all heard just horrifying things there as well. So it's Muslim majority population as well, which is under threat, and there's ongoing human rights abuses, from mass killings, torture, abuse, political oppression, and the suppression of freedom of speech. there have been various groups that have been held accountable for these human rights abuses against the Kashmiri people as well, like the Indian Army, the border security personnel as well, in addition to more. And listening to today and what can be done, of course, as the President said as well, it's very important for us to contact the United Nations Security Council personally, and for us to demand help from the MPs where we are writing letters. You can even organise meetings. And I think mostly for the youth to stay informed, to keep using the press, to use social media to just indicate how crucial this situation is, which we can all tell is dire at the moment, even in addition to the pandemic. I think we can all see how dire the situation is, and to try our best to stay informed in that way. But for me personally, I would say going down the political route is something that I learned today more so than ever before. And I'm thankful for everything that I learned today as well. And inshallah, we just do dua to Allah as well, that Allah eases their pain and the hardship. And the civil rights movement would be an incredible route to go down if that could materialise, inshallah. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much to Sumaya for this address, and I think it highlights that we don't need to know a lot, but as long as we've got a longing for justice, we can achieve great things. I now call on Mrs. Fakih-e-Tayyib, the Deputy Secretary of General Tehreek-e-Kashmir, Norway, to speak, please. Sorry,
we can't hear. Fakia, we can't hear you. No.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fakia Tayyib and I'm a university student. Firstly, I would like to thank Tehreek-e-Kashmir for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm grateful for the platform that Tehreek-e-Kashmir offers the youth all over the world. I have been active in this cause for the past 2 to 3 years. And when speaking about Kashmir and its current state, I think it's really important to focus on the fact that we are fighting together as an ummah, and not just for a piece of land, but for our freedom. The bond we have with our Kashmir brothers and sisters is not based on nationality or ethnicity, but the bond between us is the bond of deen, the bond of iman, and the bond we have as Muslims. And this bond is stronger than blood, ethnicity, color, language, culture, etc. My dear Prophet ﷺ said that Muslims are like one body. When a part of it feels pain, the whole body becomes restless. So we must understand that it's not their pain, but it's our pain. Not their suffering, but our suffering. Not their loss, but our loss. And after knowing all this, I still don't see much sorrow in our eyes. We often forget much of it. If put in perspective, we must know that 8 million of us are under constant repression by Indian forces. 8 million of us are under total occupation. 8 million of us are completely isolated from the outside world. 8 million of us have been deprived of liberty. 8 million of us are starving. And 8 million of us are daily victims of inhumane torture. There are infinite number of injuries, wounds, and deaths in each family. Therefore, the first step I think we need to take is to become united on every single level. Without unity, there will be no strength. We pray and hope for a better tomorrow. May Allah unite us and strengthen us. We must remember that no effort goes in vain, and therefore our fight will continue, inshallah. And again, I'm really thankful that Kashmir gives the youth platform where they can express what they feel about this cause. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. And I really like how you highlighted the importance of the Ummah in this fight for freedom. I now call on Mr. Asif Nazir, youth leader of Tehreek-e-Kashmir, Italy, to give their remarks.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम। ये मैं अपनी गुफ्तगू जो उर्दू में बयान करूँगा इंशाल्लाह। तो हमारा इटली में अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह तकरीबन जो हमारी फर्स्ट जनरेशन है और 10 साल से अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह इस तहरीक को आगे लेकर चल रहे हैं। तो अगली जनरेशन जो हम यहाँ पर छोटी एज में आए, यहाँ पर पैदा हुए और उन बच्चों तक उस तरीके से वैसे जो कह लें कि कश्मीर का बयानिया, कश्मीर के मसले का बयानिया उन तक नहीं पहुंचा। मैं अपनी खुद की बात करूंगा, जैसा कि मेरे घर में बहुत सारे मेरे जो भाई कज़न्स थे और जो वो इस चीज़ों को जानते थे, लेकिन आज तक उन्होंने उस तरीके से मैं यहाँ पढ़ा हूँ उस तरीके से नहीं बयान कर सके। इससे मुझे ये महसूस हुआ कि हमने जो कश्मीर का जो बयानिया है वो शायद हम दुनिया को उस तरीके से नहीं बता सके। आप देख लें कि कुछ सालों पहले कश्मीर की जब हम बात करते थे, अभी भी जब हम इटली में किसी भी सेमिनार में बात करते हैं तो वो इटालियन इस तरीके से हमें देखते हैं कि देखें भई आप कौन सी बात कर रहे हैं, यहाँ तो हमें पता नहीं, क्योंकि हमारे पास वही इंफॉर्मेशन, वही हमारे पास चीज़ें आई हैं जो तो इंडिया से आ रही हैं और वो जो ऐसे कह लें कि मतनाज़ा टाइप है। और हम किसी को ये नहीं कहते कि एक की गलती है या दूसरे की, लेकिन वो देख लें आज तक कश्मीर का मसला जो है इन लोगों तक हम नहीं पहुंचा सके। उसकी वजूहत मेरे ख्याल में ये हैं कि हमारी कम्युनिटी के अंदर जो काफ़ी जो प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, हमने देखा कि पूरे इटली के लिए हम तहरीक-ए-कश्मीर को साथ लेकर चले आज तक, लेकिन हर एक की प्रॉब्लम्स थी। जो कुछ लोग ऐसे कहते थे कि ये इस तरीके से करना चाहिए, पाकिस्तान का नाम नहीं लेना चाहिए, लेकिन मैं समझता हूँ कि ये जो हमारा बयानिया है ये क्लियर कट होना चाहिए और ऐसे क्लियर कट होना चाहिए ताकि ये आवाज़ पूरी दुनिया तक जाए। जो आवाज़ दुनिया तक पहुंच चुकी है उसकी जो उसको निकाल कर और जो नई फीडबैक उसमें वो चीज़ डाली जाए। तो अगर आप देख लें, मीडिया का देख लें, तो आपको पता होगा कि एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल पूरी दुनिया में इतने जोर से 1 साल हो गया। मैंने पिछली जो हमने सेमिनार किया था इधर इटली में कश्मीर पर, तो वहाँ मैंने बताया था कि एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल तकरीबन 10 से ज़्यादा आर्टिकल्स ऐसे लिख चुके हैं 5 अगस्त से 2019 से लेकर आज तक, और मैं हैरान हो गया कि आज तक किसी ने ये चीज़ हाईलाइट ही नहीं की है। तो जब मैं देख के एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल के अदारे को, उनको मैंने जो उनका हेड था उनको मैंने रब्ता किया और उनको हमने इनवाइट भी किया कि आप हमारे सेमिनार में आए। देखें, तो जब मैंने एक एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल इंडिया का पढ़ा कि उनको बैन किया गया, उनके जो हेड था उधर इंडिया के उनको बैन किया गया, तो ये आप देख लें इतनी ज्यादती हो रही है जो इंडिया करता जा रहा है, लेकिन वेस्ट तक ये आवाज़ नहीं पहुंच रही। तो ये इन तंजीमों का हमने शुक्रिया भी अदा किया कि एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल आपने इतना हमारे लिए जो आर्टिकल्स लिखे हैं और इटालियन में या इंग्लिश में, तो ये हमने उनका शुक्रिया भी अदा किया। उसके बाद आप BBC न्यूज़ को देख लें, उनके भी इतने आर्टिकल्स हैं। मैंने खुद बहुत ज़्यादा जो मवाद उधर से लिया है और हमने जितने भी अपने जो नौजवान लड़के जो थीसिस लिख रहे हैं, और मैंने 2 महीने पहले मुझसे एक लड़के ने रब्ता किया, वो कहता कि मैंने 8वीं क्लास में हूँ तो मैंने एक थीसिस लिखना है। उन्होंने हमें बोला कि आपने एक थीसिस लिख के लाना है किसी भी टॉपिक पे। उसने कहा कि मैं कश्मीर का टॉपिक चूज करूंगा। तो मैंने कहा ठीक है, मैं उसको मवाद उसको मैंने दिया। तो उस लड़के ने जब बयान किया तो उसकी जो टीचर थी उसने कहा शाबाश बेटा, हमको तो आज तक पता ही नहीं था इस टॉपिक पे भी बात हो सकती है, या इस तरीके से जो आपने हमारे सामने जो चीजें आपने लाई हमें तो नहीं पता था इस तरीके से। तो वो लड़के अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह उसका 80-90% से, रेहान मकसूद उसका नाम है, तो उसने पास किया और वो बहुत खुश था। और इसी तरीके से इन जैसे लड़कों को हम जो है प्रमोट कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि ये तो ऑलरेडी वर्कर हमारे साथ हैं, लेकिन जो हम रैलियां वगैरह इधर से निकालते हैं, जो कॉन्फ्रेंसेस वगैरह एहतजाज हम करते हैं, वहां पर जो नौजवानों का अभी तक रोल है वो बहुत कह लें कि सोशल वर्कर टाइप है, क्योंकि वो ही हैंडल करते हैं जो हर जो प्रोग्राम को। तो उस लिहाज से हमने पिछले साल जो नवंबर में एक पाकिस्तानी कल्चर पर एक प्रेजेंटेशन दी, जो कि महमूद असगर चौधरी साहब जो कि UK से आए थे, جو جرنلسٹ ہیں انہوں نے جب پریزنٹیشن دی تو اس کے بعد میں نے ادارہ والوں سے کہا, جو اٹالین ادارہ تھا, تو میں نے ان کو کہا کہ ہم نے کشمیر پہ بھی بات کروانی ہے. پھر ہم نے جو تحریک کشمیر کے جو صدر تھے اٹلی کے ان کو بلایا, اور جب بات انہوں نے کی اس طریقے سے اٹالین میں انہوں نے بات کی تو وہ ریئلی وہاں پہ بھی حیران رہ گئے, بھائی ہم تک آواز نہیں پہنچ رہی, یہ کیسے ہو سکتا ہے. پھر ان کا انٹرویو بھی لیا گیا اور اس کے بعد ہم نے جو ہے ان کی آواز جو ہے خبروں تک پہنچی اور اٹالین میڈیا تک بھی پہنچی تھی. تو یہ جو ہم نے سیمینار وغیرہ ہم کرواتے ہیں انفارمیٹیو سیمینار اور کرواتے ہیں, ان سے ہمارا مقصد یہی ہے کہ کسی طریقے سے اس ایشو کو جو ہم بیان کر سکیں. تو جب میں نے آخری 5 اگست 2020 کا ایک ہم نے سیمینار جہاں پر ہم نے کانفرنس جس پہ ہم نے اٹالین جو ادارے ہیں ان کو ہم نے ان کے ساتھ مل کے جتنی بھی ہیومن رائٹس کی جو تنظیمیں کام کر رہی ہیں ان کو ہم نے جب بلایا اور ان کو میں نے یہ کہا کہ آپ اپنی ہسٹری میں دیکھ لیں, اور میں یہ سمجھتا ہوں کہ میں ایز اے پاکستانی اور میں اپنے آپ کو اٹالین بھی محسوس کرتا ہوں, کیونکہ میری جو جتنی بھی دیکھ لیں آپ میری جو بچپن سے 12-13 سال سے میری جتنی بھی اسٹڈیز ہے وہ یہاں کلیئر ہوئی ہے. تو آپ دیکھ لیں کہ ان کو جب نے کہا کہ جو موومنٹ تھی اور جو موومنٹ آف ریزسٹنس کی موومنٹ تھی انہوں نے کس طریقے سے کام کیا تھا. انہوں نے اس طریقے سے کام کیا تھا کہ وہ متحد ہو گئے تھے اور ان کا یہی نعرہ تھا کہ ہمیں کل کی فکر نہیں ہے. میں ان کے سامنے بیان کیا کہ یہ اٹالیا کی ہسٹری ہے, ہم نے اس سے بھی سیکھنا ہے کہ ہمیں کل کا پتہ نہیں ہے, لیکن یہ جو نظام نیزی فاشسٹ کا ہے اس کو ہم جو ہے نا اپنے ملک میں نہیں زندہ رکھیں گے. 2 سال میں 1943 سے لے کر 1943 سے لے کر 1945 تک انہوں نے اس طریقے سے تحریک چلائی کہ وہ جو ہے ڈیموکریٹک ریپبلک میں جو ہے وہ تبدیل ہو گیا. مطلب یہ دیکھیں جو جب میرے خیال کے مطابق انسانوں کے اندر وہ جذبہ پیدا ہو جاتا ہے کہ ہم نے کسی بھی کاز کو لے کر اٹھنا ہے اور ہم نے ہر لحاظ سے ہر جو ہے شعبے میں اس کو جو ہائی لائٹ کرنا ہے, تو میرے خیال کے مطابق ہمیں یہ جو اٹلی کی تاریخ سے بھی سیکھنا چاہیے. اور ان سے بھی میں نے کہا اٹالین سے کہ آپ بھی ہمیں کوئی ایسا راستہ بتائیں, آپ یہ ہمیں کوئی ایسا جو طریقے سے بتائیں کس طریقے سے آپ نے یہ موومنٹ کو جو ہے لے کر آگے گئے. تو ادھر ہمیں انہوں نے بہت زیادہ پروپوزل بھی دیے. انہوں نے کہا جیسے آپ اس طریقے سے ورک کر رہے ہیں آپ ایسے ورک کرتے رہیں. انہوں نے کہا کہ آپ یقین کریں جس طریقے سے آپ کام کریں آپ کو پتہ نہیں کہ ہم کہاں پر اس کو لے کے جا سکتے ہیں, لیکن وہ کہتے ہیں کہ اسی لائن پہ رہیں, اداروں کے ساتھ اٹیچ رہیں, ہم آپ کے ساتھ کھڑے ہیں. لیکن یہ کہتے ہیں کہ یہ آخری سیمینار آخری کانفرنس نہیں ہونی چاہیے, اس کے بعد ہمیں ایک تسلسل لے کر آگے چلنا ہوگا. تو اسی طریقے سے ہمیں ہر ذرائع سے ایسی فضا ہم کوشش کر رہے ہیں کہ کریٹ ہو, اور یہی ہمارا جو پورے یورپ میں جہاں بھی ہم جاتے ہیں ہماری کوشش یہی ہوتی ہے کہ کسی نہ کسی طریقے سے یہ جو آواز ہے مسئلہ کشمیر پر جو آواز ہے یہ کبھی بھی نہ دبے. جزاک اللہ. السلام.
بہت شکریہ عاطف نذیر صاحب. I would now like to call Mr. Atif Aslam from Tehreek-e-Kashmir, Norway, to give his address. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I would like to start in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and greet all of you with the Islamic greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have recently joined Tehreek-e-Kashmir, Norway, so I'm quite fresh in terms of the issue. I'm still learning quite a lot. I had a lot to learn today. But the issue that repeats itself amongst all of the speeches that have been made today is to inform others. My role in Tehreek-e-Kashmir in Norway is to actually communicate in Norwegian, which I think is also a very big aspect of communication, to present all of the information, to present the issues in the local languages, so that the local communities can understand much better and you can interact much more with the local communities. Regarding the issue itself, it's definitely been brushed away aside in terms of the media. There's less and less people that know of it with time, but inshallah, with organizations like Tehreek-e-Kashmir, we will not let it fade away, and we will try our best, inshallah, to keep it alive. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Atif Islam. Jazakallah khair for that. I would now like to call Mrs. Ikra Shakir from the University of Birmingham to give her address. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
And see me, yeah?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ikra Shakil, and I'm a student at the University of Birmingham. And first of all, I just wanted to say Jazakallah for letting me speak on this platform. I've been introduced to this organization via my family members. And once I got involved, before I got involved, I didn't know much about this issue despite being from Pakistan and being a Kashmiri. And once I started like listening to people and their stories and friends who are from Indian Kashmir, I began to understand just how much this issue is affecting and how this oppression is affecting our fellow brothers and sisters in Islam. And as the youth of today, I feel like we are a lot more socially and politically conscious than the youth of the generations that came before us. And I feel like a lot of this is attributed to social media and how we all have some sort of platform where we can voice our concerns and voice our thoughts and fight for things that we believe are right. So often as a student and as a young person, you can feel like very lost in the world when it comes to politics because you feel like, you know, I'm only young, how do I get my voice across? And I think the first thing to do is start like from something that's close to you, start from home. And the way you can do that is through social media. You can like follow organizations that are fighting for the rights of the Kashmiri people. You can, at your own universities, within your Islamic societies, within your Pakistani and Indian societies, you can say we should all protest outside an Indian embassy of our city. We can raise money, we can fundraise, we can raise awareness, we can share our voices on social media and get people involved. And I think it's very important that as young people, we do these things and we get out of the little bubble that we live our lives in, because at the end of the day, so many of us are Kashmiri and we have these 8 million, as was said before, we have 8 million Kashmiris in India who are being denied their basic rights, whereas we live our lives with so much privilege. So I think it's time that we speak to our friends, speak to the people around us, speak to the students that we go to university with, and get them to also come out of their bubble, start from home and share this message, share this and raise awareness for the people that are suffering, who are our brothers and sisters in Islam, and help them. There's so much that we can do as young people, as has been mentioned before. So I don't think we shouldn't all feel that, you know, there's not much we can do just because we're young people, because there's so much that we can do. And if one person does it, another will follow, and then another will follow. And we could create a massive movement which will get people to listen to our voices. So I think it's really important that we come out of this this thought, and I know I had it too. I had this thought that, you know, as a student, what is it that I can do? And I finally come to understanding that there's so much that I can do. So if you have like people around you who want to do something but don't know how, then tell them this message. Tell them there is so much that they can do to help their brothers and sisters in Islam. And I think that's all from me. And once again, Jazakallah Khairun for allowing me to speak on this platform and sharing all your speeches and ways of how we can combat this very serious issue. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, thank you very much, Ikra. Our next speaker is Mr. Shoaib Majid from Aston University, and he's a youth leader in Tehreek-e-Kashmir, UK.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Walaikum assalam, we can hear you very well.
All right. So my name is Sahib Majid, and I'm a student at Aston University. And I would first like to thank Tehreek-e-Kashmir and Fahim Kiani for this opportunity, because I like how they're starting to give youth a voice, because it's a dire situation in Kashmir. Their basic human rights are being exploited. The right to education, the right to freedom of religion, they are being killed, tortured, raped. This goes beyond religion. This is for humans. And what I call for is to use the platform of social media. It is powerful to reach a wide audience at the click of a button. The world is advancing. Social media is like the thing that we use more often. So we should adapt with the norms, and there's so much we can do. We can do petitions, fundraisers. We can call upon the United Nations. There's so much we can do. So I would like to end with a quote from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He said that whoever of you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. And if he is not able to do so, then let him change it with his tongue. And if he is not able to do so, then with his heart. And that is the weakest of faith. So I would like to conclude with that, and I would like to say Jazakallah khair for this opportunity, and that's it.
Thank you very much, Sahib. Our last speaker is Mr. Asif Rahman, who is the youth leader in Tehreek-e-Kashmir, Spain.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
जी, मेरी आवाज़ आ रही है?
जी
जी जी। अस्सलाम वालेकुम तमाम तहरीक-ए-कश्मीर। मेरा नाम आसिफ रहमान है। मैं रिसेंटली जो है वो तहरीक-ए-कश्मीर स्पेन से जो है वो ज्वाइन हुआ, तकरीबन थोड़ा अर्सा हुआ है। तो अभी जो है वो मैं सीख रहा हूँ यहाँ पे तहरीक-ए-कश्मीर में। तो जिसमें जो हमारे जो कश्मीरी भाई हैं उनके जो मसाइल हैं उनके बारे में। तो अभी मैं बार्सिलोना से जो है ना मुख्तलिफ जो है हम सेमिनार करते रहते हैं यहाँ पे। वो हमारे नासिर शहजाद साहब हैं, उनसे मैं जो है ना वो काफ़ी कुछ सीख रहा हूँ। तो कुछ रिसेंटली भी हमने जो है ना वो तहरीक-ए-कश्मीर के प्लेटफॉर्म से एक साइकिल मार्च भी वो निकाला है यहाँ पे, जिसमें मुख्तलिफ जो है वो हमारे जो शर्ट्स हैं उस पर वो फ्रीडम फॉर ऑल, फ्रीडम फॉर कश्मीर के नाम से जो है एक नारा लिखा हुआ था। और उसके साथ ये एक हमने कोशिश की है कि एक नया जो है वो ताकि वो यहाँ के जो लोकल जो कम्युनिटी है उनको को मैसेज जो है वो दे सकें। तो वो काफ़ी जो है वो इसका इम्पैक्ट हुआ है यहाँ पे अपना स्पेन में। तो हमारी कोशिश यही है कि मज़ीद भी हम जो है ना वो नेक्स्ट ऐसे प्रोग्रामात करें जिसमें जो हम यहाँ के यूथ को जो है ना वो इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकें, ताकि हमारी यूथ जो है वो ताकि हमारे मुस्तकबिल जो है वो हमारा यूथ है, और ताकि हम उनको जो है ना यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा गाइड करें। तो जिससे जो है ना हमारा इंशाल्लाह हम आगे भी तहरीक-ए-कश्मीर जो है वो उसमें जो है ना वो मज़ीद सीखेंगे और इसको जो है ना वो आगे मज़ीद इंशाल्लाह वो कंटिन्यू करेंगे। थैंक यू सो मच।
बहुत शुक्रिया आसिफ रहमान साहब। I would now like to invite His Excellency Sardar Masood Khan Saab to give closing remarks.
Well, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. It has been a very, very interesting and a very productive session. And once again, I congratulate Fahim Kiani and Tehreek-e-Kashmir for holding this convention, which was about awareness raising, and it has raised our awareness about the developments taking place in Jammu and Kashmir. But that's not enough. We have to have a strategy to forge ahead to combat Indian oppression and to demand right to self-determination for the people of Jammu and Kashmir and seek justice for them. And we would also demand that the world holds India accountable for its unforgivable crimes against humanity, which it has been committing for the past 7 decades, particularly since August the 5th last year. Let me also give you a compliment. What's your name? You've been conducting this session.
Yusuf Farooq.
Yusuf?
Farooq.
Yusuf Farooq, you have conducted the session very professionally and very efficiently. Thank you so much for doing that. Couple of thoughts that I want to share with you. One is that youth should grab leadership. Nobody is going to transfer it to you voluntarily of their own volition. So you have to grab leadership. Now, the students and representatives who are speaking here today, they are in their 20s, early 20s, late 20s, and or probably most of them in their early 20s. So I was encouraged by your remarks, but you have to demonstrate leadership. Don't wait for your elders to pass the baton to you. Take the baton and lead the charge and turn, as I said earlier in my opening remarks, turn Kashmir movement into an international movement, turn it into civil rights movement, turn it into a civil society movement internationally, globally. It's a new era. The world system is changing. Global citizenry is making decisions. Formal forums are no more as effective as they were once. You know, you too, citizens of the world, have monopoly over decision making because of globalization, because of communication revolution. So this is a brave new world. Take charge and reshape this world. And in this endeavor, while you're building your own careers and you're investing in self-development, save people like the people of Jammu and Kashmir from savagery, from brutalities, from terrorism. Second is that I would like to say, one of the participants talked about Ummah. What does Ummah mean? Ummah means community. And we are the Muslim Ummah, but we also stand for humanitarianism. We stand for universal values, as a matter of fact. This was taught to us by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And these are the tenets of the Quran. So as a community, it is our responsibility to save a population from the repression of a fascist regime, the Bharatiya Janata Party and Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. It is our collective responsibility. It is not just the responsibility of the Muslim Ummah, it is the responsibility of the international community. But you as individuals, as groups, as communities, you have to chip in and make your own contribution towards the liberation and freedom of the Kashmiri people. One thing that I want to say about the narrative, sometimes young people, particularly those who are abroad, they complain that they do not have the facts or figures, or they do not have the narrative. I'd say construct your own narrative based on the data that is available on the net. We are living in a different world. I mean, in today, there's lots of information which is available on the social media, on the print media, and also on television networks. But I think that the easiest way to access information is through social media and newspapers which carry these stories, despite all the restrictions from the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. As far as information about special rapporteurs is concerned, I can tell you that special rapporteurs, for instance, more than a dozen special rapporteurs have written to the Indian government to stop massacre in Kashmir, or some 14 senators, in fact, of the US Congress, of the US Senate, they have written to President Trump to put pressure on India to stop these killings and human rights violations in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. when you find this kind of material, broadcast it, disseminate it. And so there's no dearth of information. In fact, last year, for the consecutive 3 months, August, September, October, the world compiled a lot of data against India, a lot of data which could indict India as a perpetrator of crimes against humanity. So I think that you're in places where it is easier to get information about what is happening in Kashmir. But if you need any assistance or any expert assistance, I mean, I'm always available, and the people of Jammu and Kashmir here in Azad Kashmir and Pakistan are available, are at your disposal. I visited Italy, and I know how active the Italian community is. I went to Spain, and I know how the Spanish, our community in Spain, Barcelona included, is active. I've been to Norway, and I've seen the passion with which Pakistanis and Kashmiris, Norwegians of Pakistani and Kashmiri extraction are working there. And they're using these rallies and demonstrations and seminars to put across their point of view. But the thing to remember here is that you have to create that critical mass to turn Kashmir movement into a mass movement, an international mass movement, so that India is forced to stop its repression, and the United Nations Security Council is forced to hold India accountable, and the United Nations is pressured to implement its resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir, which guarantee safeguard of the rights, the fundamental rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. This is one seminar, and as somebody had pointed out that this is not a one-off seminar, that there would be many other seminars. I would appreciate if participants always, when they come to these seminars, they say what they have done in the past and what they plan to do in the future, because this is what Tehreek-e-Kashmir has been doing. It has a solid record of substantive performance in the past year, since August the 5th, last year and before. And it has chalked out a series of events or plans. So that, in fact, inspires others to make their own contribution, and that strengthens the movement. Now, the last point that I want to make is that before COVID-19 pandemic, I used to go to the different capitals of the world, and there I would go to the universities. I mean, in the United Kingdom, I can tell you that I went to the Oxford University, I went to University College of London, many other places, and my last stop was at the University of Sussex. The reason I mention it is that we presume that if we talk to ourselves or amongst ourselves, that is sufficient. No, it is not. You know, your friends, your network of friends there, I'm talking to the young students who are sitting here today, that talk to your peers and talk to your faculty, and they would understand, yes, somebody was narrating that, that experience that a little girl took the initiative and made a presentation on Kashmir, and her audience said that they never had known about the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and they never had that opportunity to know about Kashmir. I can assure you that if you talk to your peers across the political and educational spectrum, across the racial and ethnic spectrum in university campuses, people would respond to what you would say, and they would be able to make their own contribution towards the realization of the right to self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. The last word, Kashmiris have shed blood for more than 7 decades. 500,000 people have been killed, and there are 900,000 troops present in the territory of the Jammu and Kashmir. And even today, they are determined that they would liberate their territory. We need support of the freedom-loving people like you. And thank you so much for organizing this convention, Mr. Fahim Kiani, and thank you so much for attending this, all the participants.
Thank you very much to Mr. Fahim Kiani for organizing this insightful webinar today. And I would also like to especially thank His Excellency Sardar Masood Khan Saab, the President of Azad Jammu Kashmir. We can assure you that as students, we will be campaigning hard for the liberation of the Kashmiri people. I've just received in the chat box from my friend Adam Zaid, solidarity to the people of Kashmir from the Palestinians. It's now up to us as students to get involved with Kashmiri groups like Tehreek-e-Kashmir in the UK, who really have been playing a leading role in their successful virtual conferences. There's been a plethora of them taking place during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as well as the various protests and demonstrations, mass mobilizations of Kashmiris across the UK and across Europe. So once again, I would like to thank Tehreek-e-Kashmir, and I would urge everyone here in the call today to continue working with this instrumental organization for the liberation of Kashmir. And this is where we end it today. Thank you very much for your attendance. Hafiz.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for participating in this convention. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.